Well, Larry Goldberg and I are back for our regular Friday afternoon review of the week. And the name of the show is Good News Friday. So, Larry, we're going to have to find the good news in all this. And I know there actually was a lot of good news. So, if you like having Larry and I do this number on Friday afternoon, then please hit like and then hit subscribe and hit notify. As I've been telling you for a couple of days now, we've got a lineup this weekend of folks coming on board. The one you cannot miss it, is going to be Brian Wang. He's got a completely new theory around the idea of Tesla as an AI company who specializes in robotics, which is how Elon is now describing the company. He's got an idea about that. Of course, for him, it's the next big idea. So you don't want to miss that one. So hit notify for that. And then follow Larry at Tesla Larry and on Twitter. So Larry,
I've got a much bigger idea than Brian's.
You do? What's your big idea?
Before I talk about my big idea, let me first say that the news of the day is Tesla coming out with a 7-year financing.
How about that one?
That's huge. And Tesla did a raise. They went to the market and they raised some money this last week. And I'm surprised nobody asked that question on the call. What has surprised me more than any of this is that Tesla went to pricing as their lever.
Yes.
In this down market.
Yes.
And I expected them to go to leasing and to financing as their lever.
Did you read the Elon Musk mission?
And so, the fact that they've gone to the market, raised this $1 billion, and they're going to 7-year financing, that is really big news to me. And nobody even asked the question at the earnings call. By the way, it was disaster of an earnings call for the analysts. I mean, for us, a lot of valuable information out of it, but that's not really the purpose of an earnings call. So, but nonetheless, I think that was very, very important information. So now I'll get to my theory.
Well, wait a minute. We want to talk about this leasing thing for another second, because again, in the Elon Musk mission, I put down, I forget how many of levers, other levers besides pricing, because the pricing was low on my list. And I had to actually put out a video one time saying I goofed, because when Elon came out and the first lever he pulled was pricing, I was like, that was the last thing I would have expected, because there was all these other ways he could have gone. And I was actually suggesting 10-year leasing. The cars are going to last for 20 years, no problem.
I think 10-year leasing would have raised people's eyebrows. I'm not sure they would have got the $1 billion on them at the pricing that they got it at.
Yeah.
You have to balance. You can't do with financing what you want to do. You have to do with financing what are the boundaries of your credit line.
Sure.
And everybody says, oh, Tesla's got all this money. No, they don't. You don't use your own money for this kind of credit. You really, got to steer clear of it. So I doubt very much that I don't know what the loans say, and we can look at the 10Q. This 10Q may have that line of credit information in it, but I doubt whether they would have allowed 10 years. Maybe, but I don't think so.
Anyway, but the general purpose, the general idea, lower the cost per month, which is what Elon's been talking about all along, lower the cost per month. You can do that 2 ways other than lowering the price. You can do it by lowering the interest rate, so you can buy down the interest rate, or you can do it by lengthening the term, or both, or all three.
or leasing instead of selling.
Yes, of course.
Tesla... So one of the levers that Tesla has is relaxing the very harsh terms of their current lease agreement.
Yes.
Because it's very tough.
Yes.
It's very tough. But they could really, really relax that without affecting the pricing.
Yes, and the other thing about leasing, I did a video again, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago, where I showed that Tesla makes a huge killing on the leasing business because of the resale market being so much higher than it's based than the lease is based on.
It has been, but that may be changing now. I
Right.
mean, given the market, yeah.
But
Given
the market could go back up. I suspect that at least Tesla used cars could go back up next year. Okay, we're ready now, Larry. I wanted to really flesh that out, but I'm ready.
Okay, so the licensing of FSD, there's so much more there to unpack than just licensing the FSD. I've thought about this. And really what the Pandora's box that's being opened is not just the licensing of FSD, but the licensing of the vehicle operating system, the Tesla operating system, or vehicle operating system, because you can't license FSD without an FSD computer.
Yes.
You can't have an FSD computer unless you have a vehicle operating system. And if you have a vehicle operating system, then suddenly Tesla's OEMs and Tesla's contractors and Tesla becomes an important source instead of your standard, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, down to tier 6 OEMs that supply parts right now. And suddenly the complexion of Tesla's business changes completely. Now, all of a sudden, the guys like General Motors and Ford, who are struggling to do this engineering, I mean, they're not succeeding.
And Volkswagen famously,
and Volkswagen, who would be famously trying to build their own software, all of this stuff, suddenly they have the plans, the designs, the engineering, and they can even buy the component parts. They can make some of them themselves, or they can buy them. They can make the drivetrain themselves to the plans, or buy them. It macht nicht. It doesn't make any difference.
right?
So instead of going to Magma or Bosch or whatever, they go to Tesla, or they go to Tesla Supply, or they go, that's licensing. And now you're getting to the mission. Now you're getting to the plan. You talked about the plan. This is the plan for Tesla. And so when you look at Ford, you look at this enormous expense that they face, you look at this enormous cost that they're incurring. I mean, they could reduce their cost by a dramatic amount. And then the 48-volt system becomes a very simple transition for them, as opposed to a very painful transition. Everything becomes easy. And then when you think about the fleet business, and they spoke about the fleet business, this hides an enormous opportunity, because the vehicle operating system, or the Tesla operating system, whatever you want to call it, avails the fleet owner the ability to control, firstly, the ability to gather real data, real-time data, which in today's market, in today's cars, they can gather some of and a degree of, and it's really not very good. But with Tesla, they have incredible data, not just about FSD, but about the vehicle.
Yes.
And they have incredible insight into what's happening to the fleet. So suddenly, Tesla licensed vehicles, Tesla operating system vehicles, become the ideal fleet vehicle. And whether we get to robotaxis, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but whether we get to robotaxis or not, in the near term, it means that the Tesla licensee has the ability to provide their vehicles to these Tesla fleets as well.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, magic happens. And what is the magic? That suddenly the input into the Tesla AI is expanded multifold. Tesla gains the advantage, and they've shown themselves to be humble in terms of pricing. NACS they're giving away at no charge. Their patents they've given away at no charge. I think they'd be very generous with the licensing. Why? Because it
advances the mission.
It achieves the end goal of the mission, And it transforms Tesla's business. Because suddenly, instead of them having to provide the 20 million vehicles or the 60 million vehicles, they're like 10 major OEMs that can be providing those vehicles. And every one of those vehicles could be, part of the fleet, and Tesla would gain, half a cent a mile for the fleet, or even less. But the dollars are gigantic because the mileage is gigantic. So that FSD licensing is not FSD licensing. It's, the Tesla operating system, or the FSD, it's the vehicle operating system that will become the standard operating system. It'll become like the, I don't know, what's the Android of vehicles.
Yes. Well, so Jim Farley mentions famously that he has 160, was it, vendors just for software.
My point exactly.
So he gets one vendor for software and he gets FSD on top. I mean, I don't know what. So, and of course, everybody thinks it's Jim Farley that's on the phone with Elon anyway on this particular issue. I'm wondering. In fact, I just did an interview on another channel where we discussed the possibility that who might really be on the phone. It might be BYD. Because BYD.
I don't think so. I think Nissan is a good. Look, it could be Volkswagen, it could be Nissan. I think Ford is probably the right guy, but I think the phone conversation goes much further than FSD. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as long as you're in, you might as well go all the way if you're already dealing with this issue that he's dealing with, and you not only get FSD, you get some of that stuff you were just talking about, but the over-the-air update, which is the thing that consumers are actually talking about. That if you don't have it, you're not in the game.
You get everything. Yeah. You get the vehicle operating system, you get the over-the-air updates, and you get basically the opportunity to implement the whole technology end-to-end, the engineering end-to-end, the cost. I mean, the operating system really depends upon the computers. So you'd have to buy those computers. So once you get those computers, you've got the central nervous system connection points. This is where all of the Ethernet comes into, right?
Yeah.
It's where all the cameras come into. So, the leap from FSD to the vehicle operating system is not much of a leap. And now suddenly you have all the software available to you, and you can dump like 2/3 of your vendors.
Right. Yes. Okay. So we agree on that one. I'm 100% that is a very strong next big future. Brian, I'm sorry. I'm stealing your thunder, but I'm giving you credit. All right. So, by the way, Brian is along the same lines as you, but he actually takes it another step. So be sure and watch that video, everybody.
So I just want to, Randy, can I quickly give a shout out to my friend Sawyer?
Absolutely.
Sawyer Merritt, I'm wearing your Twin Birch t-shirt. Guys, this Twin Birch stuff is fantastic.
And he was the one, I don't know if you saw it elsewhere. He's where I first saw that the 7-year loan was available. So
listen, let's face it. Sawyer's the guy where we first see all the news. So.
Well, not all. I have a lot of other places that I have to go, but he does a very good job of bringing me news that I need. Yeah. All right. So now, so anything else in the earnings call that struck you besides that?
I was looking at this below line income item,
right?
And I think we have to wait for the 10Q to really understand it. I think that that they may be buying exchange rate instruments. I can't see how they could have made that money otherwise. So I would have thought that they would mention it on the call if that were the case. They didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm quite intrigued to see what that's all about.
Yeah, so again, being in the plastics business and buying and import export, I was always drawn to the idea that maybe I should be, playing in the exchange rates a little bit, especially with the Chinese and the European currencies. I never did, but I certainly understood the benefits that I could possibly derive if I was right. Of course, that's the reason I never did, was because I knew I would need to really put the time in to not, I mean, it would be like a separate business. But when you're the size of Tesla, you can hire the guy who can really, hopefully,
It's not one guy, it's a whole department.
okay, a whole department. But I'm just saying, so you
Yeah.
can hopefully, get that right, or at least get it right more often than you get it wrong.
Well, Tesla famously said that they don't cover it all.
Right.
And but and they never said anything about it, and they didn't explain that bottom line, that
Right.
extra line item. Not that it's that material, because if you think about all the other non sales related items, there are quite a few of them, and they kind of all balance out one way or the other. So that's the only other item. There wasn't a lot. I was quite pleased with their margins. So that theory that I inherited from Brian got me out by a lot. I actually, yeah. So anyway, that I think the one thing that doesn't work, it doesn't translate, is that that theory is really good for US pricing and US calculations, but you really need to look at China and Europe pricing as well. And I think that's where we miss. So I'm going to go back to my old method.
Yeah. So my method actually turned out to be right and wrong. I don't know if you noticed that, because they quantified the gain that they got from commodity drops, and said it was approximately the same as the IRA drop at about, so I'm guessing around 200 million, which is what I said. So that was right, but that means that, and I also think that we got more, we got higher trims because the top line number came in higher than expected. So I think the trims were higher, which is also what I expected. So that means that maybe the overall price or the price cuts were deeper than I was thinking, which is what would explain where we got to the lower actual number.
Yeah, we should have paid more attention to our good friend Troy.
So going forward, what do you think? One of the things that was talked about and was blamed on the huge drop on Thursday was the fact that there's going to be flat to lower production in the third quarter.
Didn't interpret that it was going to be lower production. I interpreted that it was lower than would have been anticipated production.
I see. I need to go back and read that transcript again, because you're the second one who said that.
Yeah, that's how I heard it at the time. There's been some discussion afterwards. I should have gone back to listen. But, I was very disappointed with the call. I hate that Elon comes to the call. At Amazon, I was a very long time investor in Amazon, as I've told you before. And I would go to all the calls, and, Jeff never turned up to those calls. Now, he did write his missives after the event, and they were very, very insightful, very valuable, and he communicated a lot in them. Everybody who defends Elon being on the call says he has to communicate, his thoughts, and it's valuable to get his communication. And if he doesn't want to write it, fine, let him do a 30-minute Q&A after the call. But I think the call should be focused on the classic information given, in investor calls. That's my view. And Zach does a fantastic job. The whole team, not just the whole team does a fantastic job of that. You know, the one call where Elon didn't turn up, stock went right up after the call, but it was a good quarter too. So there is that.
Well, my clap back on that is that I feel like Elon is the most transparent, honest founder CEO in history. And that the fact that he comes on and is as transparent and honest as he is, does affect the stock during the call and the next day. But once the world takes the finance world takes a look at the call 3 days later, 5 days later, 7 days later, just like with their investor days or their reveal days and stuff, it takes a couple of days afterwards and they finally go, oh my gosh, look what was in that call. Because the thing that to me that was in the call was about the robots. Oh my gosh, we're not talking about 5 years, Larry. We're not talking about.
Well, let's separate the robot issue because I happen to agree with you on the bots. I think the bots are a huge theme. You know, with Tesla, there's always too much to talk about. But if you just focus on the issue of the call,
yes,
again, what he's communicating is not about this quarter's results
yes,
and the outlook for the coming year or the balance of the year. That's not what he's talking about.
right.
What he's talking about is the futures. What he's talking about is the mission. What he's talking about is how Tesla is positioning itself for this mission and for the future. Earnings calls are about this last quarter and the forthcoming quarters. That's what earnings calls are about. So while you're right, and I wouldn't miss his thoughts for anything. And I go to all of his public appearances. I listen to all of his public appearances, and I try and go to every event that I can.
Right.
And I've been to a lot of them. But you have to separate that out from the purpose of an earnings call. And the reason stock goes down because people are confused. Analysts are confused. Shareholders are confused. Bankers are confused. And you're right. They kind of get there because everybody coaches them. And, you know, Morgan Stanley is really learning how to do that now. And, you know, we have some good analysts who are prepared to coach people.
Yes.
Not a great way to do business. Separate out the future from the past. And I hate to compare, you know, Jeff Bezos to Elon, given that they in a cage match, but seriously, he did it right.
So in my comments that I get on these YouTube videos and also on Twitter to a certain extent, I have two camps on this. One camp's thrilled to death that the stock went down 25 so that they could buy more.
As am I.
And the other camp is like, oh my gosh.
I've been accumulating all day, Randy.
Have you? Yeah, I'm sure you have.
I've been accumulating. Listen, these are great opportunities.
Sure.
You know, I didn't accumulate sufficiently over the year. I did accumulate some, but not sufficiently. And so, you know, accumulation is really the name of the game when you have these blips.
Yeah.
And the rebalancing, we don't know how much of this is rebalancing and how much of this is sentiment, and we don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity. And, you know, when people decry what these rumors that Tesla Q put out, I always post, guys, it's such a great opportunity, you know.
So I get the other side. So there's a lot of very unhappy people in my comments yesterday, and I can understand it because in the last 22 days, a lot of people made a lot of money, and it's sitting there.
No, they didn't make money.
I'm sorry. A lot of people had their asset appreciated in the last 22 days, and then that 22 days got wiped out in one day. But I had to have a good laugh because it was January 30th. I'm sorry, it was June 30th. The last time we were at 260, it was 22 days ago. So this was, even though it was all in one day, it was pretty that it was only 22 days ago.
So, you know, Randy, your responsibility and the responsibility of all of these, you guys who have these have this influence, your responsibility is to help people understand, not investment advice, but life advice that, what their shares stand at. And when shares go up, they don't make money. And when shares go down, they don't lose money. I hate to see people posting, I made blah, 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 or I lost blah, blah, blah. They didn't make and they didn't lose. The paper value, the value of the paper from moment to moment in the stock market and its fluctuation has no bearing on their wealth at all.
Exactly.
It is their attitude to that change in price that will affect their wealth.
Yes. It's absolutely true. 100% right. One of the things that I talk to people when I'm talking about buying leaps is to treat every single day as if you'd never traded before. Would you buy Tesla today if you had no history? Would you sell Tesla today if you had no history? Start every day of your trading life as if you'd never traded a day in your life, and this was the first time ever. And that's kind of, I think, what you're saying. You got to get the attitude out of you got to not be sad, not be disappointed. You could have made more money the other day, you told me, than you did. But there's a famous old saying, never cry over a profit. So you had a profit. But
you can't go broke taking a profit. You cannot.
All right. So Larry, what do you think is going to happen here the next couple of weeks? We got the Fed next week. We've got the overhang of this rebalancing. We have the possibility that there is some kind of a rotation out of techs and into the broader market, which I don't think would be a bad thing. I think we need to have that rotation for the second leg of the uptick. And to make the question a little longer, we've got $5.2 trillion sitting on the sidelines, and Bank of America said it's been coming off the sidelines. So what do you think is going to happen in the next few weeks?
I would say that everything turns around one guy and one speech. And, this Federal Reserve Bank has been pilloried by me and many others, far more intelligent than I, and been told just, what a shitty job they've done, excuse the language. And yet, here we sit, potentially on this beautiful, soft, pillowy landing, proving us all wrong. Now, will they take the victory? It's crazy enough that they will say, oh, we still got to raise the money, we'll skip this time, or they even may raise it. Who knows? It's so difficult. And maybe that's the genius of the guy, and maybe he'll end up being the greatest genius Federal Reserve governor we ever had. So if you're asking me to prognosticate, I would say I can't see in my crystal ball what's in this guy's mind. It escapes me. It could well be that he will just accept the victory, do the victory lap, and then talk about how to keep the global economy on track, because I think that's our biggest risk right now. The global economy is very shaky. China is very shaky. This war in Ukraine is very serious. Europe's in a bad state. The UK is in a really, really bad position. These are not good situations. We have got a Federal Reserve that has got trillions and trillions of dollars of assets on its balance sheet that are losing money like by the handful. So things are not great, even though they're great. Yeah. So what do I see for the future? My crystal ball's too cloudy.
Yeah, well, Elon said his was really cloudy too, and I would agree that there's a lot of good reasons. Sometimes in the market you can kind of see it, and sometimes it's really hard to see. And I agree with everything you just said. I just believe again, based on watching these recessions over time and watching us come out of recessions over time, it seems impossible to have these kind of labor numbers and go into recession. Now, a recession can be off of a top of a high number. So you can have had a big, you could have been going along at 4% a year or 5% a year, and then all of a sudden you have a recession because you're at a high number, kind of like when Tesla got to all-time highs, now you've got a big mountain to drop off of. So you got that situation, but we don't have that right now. We've got, people could call it stagflation, whatever you want to call it. We're just bumping along with full employment. And it's like, okay, that means we've got room to grow the economy because the economy can easily grow at 3 or 4.
Yeah, but you just said a bad word.
Uh-oh.
We don't have full employment.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
We have an imagined full employment. We have very, very low participation in our workforce. People tell me the population's aging, but I'm not buying it. The population has aged compared to the 70s and 80s, but it's not that old. We have a trove of young people not working. If you measure the age of the people not working, it's kind of like, very high at the older age, but also high at the younger age, high in relation to where it's been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, and even these older people, they could be working. So I think there's a problem with this high employment. We have a relatively low participation, not relatively low, we have an absolute low participation in our workforce, participation of our workforce in the employment numbers today. So even though we say we have very low unemployment, we only have a low unemployment because of the crazy way we measure employment. Employment should not be measured by how many of those who wish to work are working. It should be measured by how many people are participating in the economy and how many are not. That's really what is important from an economic perspective.
But even if we look at it the other way, Larry, and I don't want to, if I were to steel man the opposite side, it would be, you have this continuous increase in employment over now years. I mean, it's strong quarter after quarter after quarter of more and more employees coming into the market. We don't have any significant layoffs taking place. We have the numbers yesterday, which were the lowest they've been in a long time in terms of people that were filing for unemployment for the first time. So if you step back and you just look at the economy that we can see and actually truly measure, we've been seeing these increases. I know there was a little bit of a drop off in the hours worked, but we also had an increase in the wages at 4%. So, and that was confirmed by
both. That's not a good thing.
Well, I know ultimately it's not, but it has to happen at some point. At some point, the wages have to have a minute where they catch up, because otherwise employers will probably go back to an economy that is faced with strikes. Oh, you mean like UPS. Anyway, in general, I'm just saying it's hard for me to see any kind of a real recession unless the Fed does, in fact, continue to hammer for the next 2 months until the next time. I think he needs to lighten up. That's what I'm looking for him to do. Just lighten up in the call. Give us a hope. We've got trueflation down almost to 2%. We've got Zillow and Redfin and Case Shiller and everybody else saying that housing and rents are down. Housing is almost back to year ago, but it's still not quite back to year ago. And rents are clearly almost at zero.
But that's a function of the interest rate as well. The interest rates are so high, and yet these numbers are looking okay.
Right.
So
I don't see a recession. That's just me. That's been my call all year, continues to be my call. And I do agree with you, though. The Fed needs to just what kind of a stock market rally would we have on Thursday if they don't raise, and if they don't, if they are even if they're dovish?
Yeah, I think that if we look back, we will change the classification of what we've been through to a recession. I think the definition of recession has been so malleable that we've been able to get by with saying we're not in a recession. But there is a global recession outside of our borders. There's a global recession of quite significant proportion, particularly in some parts of the world, not the least of which is China. So, it really is incumbent upon the United States to try and drive us out of that recession. And how do we do that, when Europe's in the doldrums and, China's really struggling to right itself. And, for years and years and years, I've been decrying the property situation, the real estate situation in China. It's really bad. And, maybe it's come home to roost now. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't want to be Dr. Doom on this call,
It's Good News Friday, Larry.
Yeah.
All right. So my call, as you probably know, my call is that we could be just like today. We could be up and down Monday and Tuesday. Who knows what happens on the reset on Monday? It could go up a lot if the reset is more favorable. It could drop more if it's less favorable than people are expecting. Who knows what that's going to be? I'm not sure. This is the first time I've really paid attention to NASDAQ resets. And I don't understand why they can't give us the number, the percentages before the day that it takes place.
But isn't the reset done?
Because it is now, but it takes effect on Monday morning.
But functionally, the trading for the reset is done.
Well, functionally, it's done based on not having any information, except that the Magnificent Seven are probably all involved, and you can do.
They've got the numbers. No, they've got. Yeah.
No, I've looked every day. I've looked on the NASDAQ site. I've looked at under NASDAQ rebalance. I've looked everywhere I can look. There are people like Bank of America that have made some estimates of what they think it's going to be, because you can do the math and you can say, this is what we think they're going to do, but you don't know because you don't know what math they're using. I do stand to be corrected, but I believe that every index fund has already rebalanced to the number that they're anticipating. Yes.
And I think that Monday's going to be a non-event. That's my own personal opinion. Do not trade on that opinion, guys.
Same with me. So then I think that as we go through the week, Tesla will probably be up and down, maybe in a range, maybe slightly moving up. But then after that's over, starting on Thursday, when everything is old news, I think the second leg of the bull will be underway, and that second bull of the second leg of the bull will rise all boats, including Tesla.
The eternal optimist, Randy.
Okay, you have to admit, I got it right last week.
Oh man, you called it to the perfection.
By the way, did you know I did it again today? I said 255.
Oh, really? What did it end up being?
No, it came back up to 263 or whatever, but
you said the bottom would be
255. Yeah.
I see.
Now this is pure luck, ladies and gentlemen.
It closed at 260. I see.
Yeah, 260. Yeah, I think, or 260.
Yeah, 260.02 according to this. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a bad day.
No, I think it's fine. I think if it goes sideways for a few days, that would be absolutely normal. And I would expect it, though, once all the other nonsense is out of the way, it should start moving back towards that 300.
From your lips.
There you go. Larry, thank you for being here with me on Friday afternoon to hopefully bring in the good news, because there was plenty of it. Optimus and FSD, and add Larry in now to the entire operating system, maybe at Ford. We'll see what happens there. So hit like if you like tonight's session, absolutely hit notify to find out the rest, because Larry got part of Brian's deal and he added his own version, which Brian didn't have. but there's more to Brian's. You're not going to want to miss that. It'll either be on Saturday
I want to hear that. I'm very keen to hear that.
So hit subscribe and notify so you make sure you don't miss that. Follow Larry at Tesla Larry, and then hit my Patreon. We're trying to get to 100 by the end of the month. We're at 70 something, and we're trying to get to 100. So it's free right now for 7 days. So be sure to sign up for Patreon as well. Again, Larry, thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
And to all of you,